All right, we are back to social studies today, and we are going to start learning about Indiana's 3 regions. All right, we looked at a few different maps, and Indiana is split up into 3 chunks. The top chunk is what we're learning about today. The northern part, that's where Mrs. Hare grew up. I grew up around Lake Wawasee, which is in your maps and in your book. It's also where the dunes are, and it's called the Northern Lakes and Moraines. So I'm going to read to you out of our book the short little part about our 3 regions, and then the part about the Northern Lakes and Moraines, and then we're going to watch some videos and do some other activities to learn more about it. So, without further ado, I will read this, but I'm going to read it at my computer where I can see it. So please follow along. All right. Geographers divide Indiana into regions. A region is an area that has common features. These features might be natural based on the land or culture based on language. Okay, the 3 regions we've got under the blue subheading. Indiana is made up of 3 different regions. These are the Northern Lakes and Moraines, the Central Till Plain, and the Southern Lowlands. Each region has its own special characteristics. The Northern region, that's the one we're talking about today, has several large cities and many lakes. Rich farmland covers much of the Central region, that's where we live. In the Southern region, there are limestone caves and rolling hills. The landforms and natural resources found in Indiana's regions make them unique. A natural resource is something in the environment that people use. For example, water, trees, soil, and minerals are natural resources found in Indiana. All right, now we have a little bit more to read about the Northern Lakes and Moraines. The Northern Lakes and Moraines region is mostly flat. Okay, so kind of like where we live here, it looks about the same. A moraine is a mass of dirt and rocks left behind by glaciers. Moraines are among the only landforms that break up the flat appearance of this region. From a distance, they look like waves. Hundreds of lakes and ponds are also in this region. The area along the shores of Lake Michigan is home to the Indiana Dunes National Lake Shore and Indiana Dunes State Park. We are almost finished. There's a little portion on the next page. Thank you all for your patience. All right, while we're waiting, I'll explain a little bit more about those moraines. Okay, we all know that when the glaciers came down from the north and started flattening Indiana, they did go over the top half, right? And they came over this part where we live and flattened it. Up in the north, they left out big divots where ponds and everything filled in. That's why there's lakes. And they also, so picture something heavy, pushing soil and rocks. What would you get in front of the heavy thing pushing? Would you get kind of a pile of stuff? Yeah. That pile of stuff that the glaciers pushed in front of them is called a moraine. So it's just little hills that make the ground not quite flat. Otherwise, where I live would be perfectly flat, just like down here. All right, I'm not sure why this isn't loading. So I am going to borrow Miss Chloe's book and read it out of here. Madeline?
It's kind of like when the glaciers made some things flat. Maybe it's because like how you iron your clothes when there's wrinkles.
Yeah, if you iron over a wrinkle, you kind of make it even more wrinkly, right? Okay, but when you iron your clothes, I get what you're saying. You push the wrinkles in the front until they're gone. Yes. All right, the very last part. The area called the The area called the Calumet is located along Lake Michigan. In the late 1800s, large companies came to this area. The new industries depended on Lake Michigan for transportation. Okay, why would transportation be easier around Lake Michigan? We talked about rivers yesterday and how they help. Quentin?
They're going to send the stuff on a boat over to the other places.
Oh, so if you were out by Lake Michigan, you could load up a huge barge and send your products wherever you needed to send them. They use local resources such as coal and limestone to make steel. Oil companies also built factories there. Today, this area is an industrial center with cities such as Gary, you've heard of that one, and Hammond. However, there is also farmland in the region. Major crops include soybeans, corn, and beef cattle. All right, so I'm not sure why that book never loaded, but Angie?
If you look at the picture on the left, the second one, the one with the yellow, it kind of looks like cheese or something.
Okay.
Which you don't like.
I don't like cheese. Alright, so now I'm going to play you a couple different videos. These are videos of examples of what some of the land up here looks like. So the first one will be about the Indiana Dunes. So raise your hand quietly if you've ever been to the dunes. Okay. So if you have, you might realize you've seen some of this. If you've never been to the dunes, consider this a virtual field trip, okay? All right.
Are we gonna do, speaking of field trips, are we gonna do field trips?
No.
Maybe
Alright.
we'll do
Voice
voices.
is off, ready for the video.
Indiana Dunes. And I'd like to share with you some of my favorite fun facts about Dunes environment, ecology, and history. Stay to the end and I'll share with you a special secret. Do you know what spawned these dunes and its diverse ecosystem? I'll give you a hint. It was 300 feet high and moved slow. Glacially slow. That's right, over 10,000 years ago, local glaciers receded north, leaving behind rolling hills, wetlands, Lake Michigan, and the dunes ridgeline. I bet you didn't know that it was this specific ecosystem that was the birthplace of the science of ecology. That's the study of organisms and how they relate to one another and their physical surroundings. You can thank Henry Chandler Coles for that. Thanks, Henry. You can also thank environmentalist groups and individuals who helped establish the state park and national lakeshore. After a decade-long battle, Congress authorized both the Port of Indiana and the National Lakeshore. Dunes, of course, are made of sand. But what's sand made out of? The sand itself is mostly made out of quartz and silica, left behind by glaciers. Its composition creates an interesting sound when you walk on it, which is why we call it singing sands. It's even been said that there are only a few other places in the world that have singing sands, like Dubai and Japan. Do you know what kind of dune this is? There are two types of dunes, fore dunes and blowout dunes. Fore dunes like this are close to the beach and they're covered with vegetation like this marrow grass. This makes for a more stabilized dune and allows even more plant life to thrive. Blowout dunes like this are caused by intense north winds that rip the dunes apart. The loose sand in this bowl makes for a moving dune that can travel several feet per year. Blowout dunes can sometimes be the result of unapproved trails, what we call social trails, which gradually turn into bigger and bigger areas of sand. So please check your map to make sure you're on approved trails only. These old pieces of driftwood and old tree stumps are called tree graveyards by the locals. Kind of spooky, but kind of cool. I bet you don't know the name of this plant and what's so special about it. It's the French Caligula, and it only grows on the north slope of one specific dune and nowhere else in Indiana. Its common name is K-wing, and you can see why, as it almost looks like it can take flight. How's that for being special? Because it's an endangered species, I'm going to keep its exact location secret. Do you know what saltation means? No, it has nothing to do with salt. It's what's happening here as the sand is being blown across the shore, eventually forming larger dunes. Like this one, Mount Tom, the tallest dune in the area at 192 feet. This may look like a desert, but it's freezing or snow-covered for several months out of the year. Not exactly the ideal place for a cactus. Or is it? This prickly pear cactus thrives because of that desert-like sand. For cacti to thrive, they need well-drained sandy soil and lots and lots of sun. We have plenty of both here in the dunes.
I'm in Hawaii.
Orchids are some of my favorite plants. We have more variety of them in the dunes region than in all of Hawaii. Can you hear that? That's some of the more than 370 species of birds that live or migrate from the dunes every year. This is a list of the birds that we've spotted so far. Oh, there's a yellow-bellied sapsucker. One of my favorite dunes critters are these six-lined race runners. Oh, there's one. These lizards can dart at up to 18 miles per hour. That's almost as fast as an Olympic sprinter.
Sly as a...
Shh! Can you hear that? It's a red fox, and I will guarantee you it can hear us. She can hear a mouse scratching a leaf 150 feet away.
I've heard of that.
The flora and fauna of the dunes have to survive hot summers and cold winters. One species of frog has figured out an ingenious way. The wood frog can freeze its body solid and has a special antifreeze in its body to preserve its cells during winter. I have my own reserves to keep me through winter. It's called tacos.
Yeah.
Do you know the hardest working animal in the dunes? It would have to be the dune beaver. We see them working on their dams every hour between dusk and dawn. I'm sure you've heard of a Venus flytrap, but have you heard of a narrow-leaved sundew or a purple pitcher plant? Try saying that 5 times real fast. These are killer plants that also feed on insects thanks to their clever adaptations. You can find these little meat-eaters at Pinhook Bog. This purple lupin plant is special. Without it, the rare Carner blue butterfly could not survive. Unfortunately, the Carner blue is no longer found in this area, but this remarkably similar mimic species can still be found if you look closely enough. It's just one example of the delicate nature of dune habitats. Those are just a few of my favorite fun facts about the Indiana Dunes. If you see me or any other ranger, ask us questions. We have lots more to share. We also have a nature center, ranger-led tours, and programs throughout the year. The Indiana Dunes State Park Nature Center is located right near our campsite. It's a great place to learn about the ecology and history of the area.
Oh, okay. So we're going to pause right there. All right. Raise your hands if you want to answer a question. What is something you noticed about the landscape of the dune area? Remember, that's in the Northern Lakes and Moraines region. What's something you noticed? Quentin?
Sandy.
Very sandy, okay? So what do you think about the soil there? Do you think the soil has a lot of sand in it?
Yeah.
It sure does. Cadence? It's very hilly, right? So if you're not right on the dunes, we still have those little moraines that we talked about. So even not right on Lake Michigan, on the other side of the state where I'm from, we're about to watch a video about what that looks like next. Eric?
I always go to the dunes so we can go on the beach.
Mm-hmm. It's fun to go to the beach there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hayden?
I've been to Lake Michigan. It's very hilly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like dunes, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Those dunes make hills, right? All right, what do you notice about the plants up there? Chloe?
It's not like that, but when it says find a ranger and ask in your ranger, so what kind of birds do you see?
All right, I'm not technically a ranger, but I have actually gone bird watching up there, and since I'm dressed like a bird watcher today, this makes sense. They have all sorts of hawks and falcons, lots of woodpeckers, lots of shorebirds, songbirds, hummingbirds. So they're on the coast of Lake Michigan, so you do get all those like wading birds, the cranes and all of that, and seagulls, plus all the woodsy birds that live in the woods next to the lake. So if you like bird watching like Mrs. Hare does, that's a great place to go. Okay, next thing I'm going to show you. This is actually the land where I grew up. So when I was a little girl, I lived right around Lake Wawasee. My parents owned a big swamp, and they actually just sold this swamp to a conservation group. Does anyone know what a conservation group is? Eric?
A person who recycles stuff?
Kind of. So a conservation group, they buy land, and then they keep it wild. Okay, you can't build on it, you can't pollute it, it has to stay wild. So the next video I'm going to show you, after they bought this land from my family, they've turned it into like a wildlife habitat sanctuary, right? So this is what the marshes and the swamps in the northern lakes and moraines look like. Hold on, we'll do questions after.
We'll do questions after.
All right, we are not going to watch this entire video. I will skip through it a little bit, but this is kind of what the swamps and the lakes and the moraines look like.
It'll be WCF's second largest acquisition. It may be the most key acquisition of all that we've made because it includes this giant wetland that's in this Turkey Creek Inlet area. We're standing in almost the absolute center.
Okay, I'm gonna pause it and talk about this quicker than they will, because they kind of ramble on too long. All right, so we've all heard of Lake Wawasee. It's the largest natural lake in Indiana. That's what this big blue is on here. So this creek and this swamp that we're talking about is what feeds the lake. So why do you think it's important that this swamp stays really clean? Angie?
Because like maybe a lot of animals come drink and like if the water doesn't stay clean, okay, so if water gets really, really dirty, it can sometimes have bad stuff that's not good for the animal's body. So if an animal drinks it, it could get a bad disease in its body and die.
Right, so for animals, and we want Lake Wawasee to stay clean. So if the river or the creek coming into the lake is polluted and dirty, it's going to cause the lake to have a lot of problems. So, Madeline, real quick, then we'll continue on.
I think it's because like if the lake is dirty, then the animals that help the earth, they might drink out of it and die. So like if they keep on drinking out of it, then they'll die, and the bugs might try to hit their body and die, and then the plants won't have much to
It's a whole cycle, right? And plants in a swamp don't grow if the water's polluted. So let's keep watching this, then we'll see if we have more questions. But this is the swamp I played in when I was a little girl, so you can kind of get a better idea of how I grew up as a swamp kid.
Well, this is the exact swamp that you
Center of the Wawasee area watershed. We have a map here showing the watershed. You can see that it covers the lakes, Syracuse Lake and Lake Wawasee. It goes out to the east and the southeast, 23,300 acres.
Whoa, that's beautiful. I thought this was
We're standing just about right in the center right now in an area called Turkey Creek Inlet, where Turkey Creek goes into the lake from its sub-watershed. Beginning of WCF in the mid-1990s, Commonwealth Engineering did a study and outlined the key major wetland areas that ought to be preserved.
swamp.
And this Turkey Creek Inlet
over there, you can see it.
is one of the key areas that needs to be preserved because 43% of the water that comes into our lake system comes into Turkey Creek water. We're standing at the Grant Sacagawea Overlook, with the Creek Inlet wetlands lie just to the east of Runaway Bay, the condominium area
He talks for a while, we'll skip him.
that's a habitat for animal life, but more than that, it provides that filtering, that kidney for the water that's coming from the agricultural areas that lie to the east in our watershed, and it filters out unwanted nutrients and sediment, and helps give us quality water in Lake Wawasee. Another fortunate part of it is that we have producers and farmers who are very conservation minded, who use best management practices, have covered crops and water filter strips, so they help to everyone for their help and support and their monetary donations so that we can make acquisitions like this. Thank you.
Okay.
That used to be your address.
Now, that's the address of their office. But my house is on the other side of this. Actually, my house is right up in here behind these trees.
What?
Where my parents still live. This is where I grew up. So this creek running through here, this is Turkey Creek. And you can see over here a little bit, that's Lake Wawasee. So this creek goes in one side of Lake Wawasee and then comes out the other side. So all of this land is considered a wetland. And up in the northern lakes and Moraines region, this is what a lot of the land is like. So you have a lot of birds that love to be in here, right? The deer love it. They have all these little trails. I used to go walk the deer trails through the swamp. We've got beavers down there. Actually, I went back to my parents this weekend, and they are having a beaver problem. They're cutting down too many trees. So up around the woods, they're having to wrap the bottoms of the trees with wire so the beavers can't cut them all down. Let's see what else is up there.
What does it matter?
We talked about the cranes, right? The sandhill cranes. This is where they would land and hang out. So you can tell my house is right up in here. It was loud where I was sleeping. So
Did it wake you up?
this is another example of what the northern lakes and moraines looks like. All right, Hayden.
I thought you wanted to be a teacher for the rest of your life. You liar.
If you're a bird watcher, then why are you a teacher?
Yeah.
Take it
Because bird watching our job. Remember what Red Ward
Okay, I'll answer questions. All right, the last thing I want to show you. I need voices off. All right, so you can kind of imagine the big glacier, okay, plowing across the land, and this was all the stuff it kind of pushed ahead of it. Okay, so this big pile here, after lots and lots of years, kind of was covered with grass and it just looks like a hill. But if you could dig down in it, you would find all sorts of rocks and whatever else the glacier pushed forward. Okay? So, I will tell you, when I first heard that the land I grew up at was supposed to be really hilly, I was thinking, it's pretty flat. So the moraines aren't very big, okay? But it is a little bit hillier and wavier than in this area where we live, okay? So they're just really little kind of wavy land hills. All right, so that is the northern lakes and moraines. Tomorrow we will talk about the Central Till Plain. See you guys later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.